What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down, took a bunch of videos that tell one overarching storyline and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be over Superan Truth. When it comes to Superan Truth, it takes place at the tail end of the New 52. DC wanted to try something new with the character of Superman, and so they said, why not depower him, mostly depowered, at the same time have the entire world find out that Clark Kent was Superman. It made for a very interesting idea, a very interesting storyline. Now, at that point, when it came to the character of Superman, well, he was in 4 different titles: Superman, Action Comics, Superman and Wonder Woman, and Batman and Superman. And each book did focus on the idea of Clark Kent trying to deal with the world knowing that he is Superman, but at the same time still trying to be a hero while being mostly depowered. And honestly, it made for some very interesting storylines. Now, when it comes to Superan Truth, it did lead into a certain crossover event better known as Savage Dawn. Now, that will be a separate video down the road. All of these videos in this one right here was just Clark trying to learn how to still be a hero without having most of his powers, but also realizing that you now have all these different kind of peoples coming after him because now they know that he is Clark Kent. I do hope you enjoy today's comic book video. So we're going to begin our coverage of the end of the New 52 Superman. Yes, you heard that right, the beginning of the end. See, at the tail end of the New 52, DC gave us this storyline right here called Superman Before the Truth. And this was a very interesting idea. And the reason why, because when it came to the New 52, it was supposed to be a reboot. Now, most parts it was, and other parts it wasn't. But when it came to the New 52, it did have some good stories, but it did have some bad stories. And matter of fact, there were more bad than good. But with that being said, when it came to the character of Superman, well, DC tried their best to bring back fans to fall in love with the character of Superman by doing all these different kinds of events like Hell on Earth, Superman Doom, Krypton Returns, and the list goes on. Unfortunately though, most of those events, or really all of them, did not really hit as DC thought they would. And so when it came to the tail end of the New 52, they were wondering, hey, what can we do with the character of Superman? And they said, hey, what if his secret identity gets out to the entire world? How can we take this idea and try to make it into some kind of interesting storyline? And so you had DC say, yeah, you know what? Go for it. Try to give us a storyline where his identity is out to the world, and how will he manage the idea the world knows that Clark Kent is Superman. And really, this leads into the actual end of the New 52. Not all the way, but right to the last story where we see the death of the New 52 Superman. And so this was really his last big, oh my God, kind of story in the New 52 era of DC Comics. And so here is Volume 1, Superman Before Truth, where his secret identity is told to the entire world. And when it comes to this storyline, we also get reminded that at this point, Superman just got a brand new power. And that brand new power was the solar flare. Now, when it comes to the solar flare, it is really more of Superman releasing a huge amount of energy. And when he does that, he is completely drained. What I mean by that is we have to remember Superman is a solar battery. The yellow sun is the reason why he has powers, but at the same time, it keeps him charged up so that he is able to use those powers, except when his cells are completely absorbed sun energy, but when he uses the solar flare, his cells are completely drained of solar energy. He is technically powerless until the sun is able to recharge his cells. And he learned about this power in a previous storyline that we have not covered yet. But in that storyline, that was when he was able to figure out, oh my God, I have this ability called the solar flare. But the problem is though, he has no idea how it actually works. He does know if he does use it, well, of course, he is almost completely drained. But the problem is though, he has no idea how to activate it and how crazy it can get. Because you are talking about the idea of releasing a huge amount of energy. And when you do, how much damage can you do by doing that? And that is the question the Justice League has for him. Like, hey, when you do it, how much energy are you throwing out? And you have the League ask another question, which is, hey, when you do a solar flare, how long does it take until your powers come back? And really, that is a very good question to ask. And the reason why, because if Darkseid comes to Earth and they don't have our boy Superman there to help them out, they are going to lose that battle. Or really, if any other powerful being that is close to the same level as Darkseid comes to Earth, they are going to lose that battle quickly because they need Superman's help. He is their strongest character. And so their question is very valid. Like, hey, how long does it take until your powers come back? Because when you do a solar flare, your cells are completely drained, which means that you are unable to use your powers until they begin the process of recharging. But at the same time, when you are recharging, what powers do you have? And what powers don't you have? And how strong are you? How fast are you? There are so many questions to ask him. And so that is why you have the League say, you know what? We need to do a test. And really, when it comes to a test, it's honestly not a bad thing to do. Because with this test, you are able to learn a lot more about him and his solar flare. At the same time, when it comes to Superman, he also wants to know more about his solar flare, how the trigger works, and how much power he can use when it comes to the solar flare. Because he tells us there's sometimes the solar flare is so powerful, it can do some serious damage. But at the same time, it's not that powerful, but it still could do some damage, but not on the same level as, a super powered solar flare. And so he says he's trying his best to understand how to control the solar flare and when to use the solar flare. Because if he does use a solar flare, he's powerless and he has to make sure it's the right time to use it, or if he does use it in the wrong time, he could most likely be killed off in some kind of way because he'll be powerless. And so we see the League be able to test him and learn more about his solar flare and how he's able to trigger this solar flare. Now, after their test, you did have our hero say, you know what? It's time for a bonding session. Let's go down to Earth and let's have some dinner and some drinks. And we're able to talk more and bond more, but at the same time, discuss the idea of how your solar flare truly does work. When our heroes go out for drinks, they do talk more about the solar flare. Now, Cyborg, unfortunately, did not join them from drinks, but you do have Cyborg call in. And he says, when it comes to Superman and his solar flare, that he's able to charge up the entire world, that they have a solution to fight against climate control. They have a clean way to give energy across the entire world thanks to Superman's solar flare. And so if they're able to find a way to just channel that energy and turn it in a way where it becomes energy before the entire world to use, it will help the world so much. But also for Superman, his mind is that with this solar flare, they'll be able to go up against some more powerful cosmic beings. Now, in reality, he's right. They could. But at the same time, he's wrong, because if he does use it in the wrong time, well, then he puts his team in the worst position because they didn't lose their most powerful character. Either way, you do have Clark get a tad bit drunk because, again, he did do a solar flare when he came to the League doing a test on him. And so because of that, when he's drinking, he does get a tad bit drunk and he does pass out. And you have the League take him back home to his apartment. Now, once he's able to overcome his hangover, well, we dive into what I say, the beginning of the end for Superman, or really the beginning of his secret identity getting out to the entire world. And the reason why I'm saying that, because when it comes to Superman, when he wakes up, he hears that there's trouble going on in Metropolis. And he realized that with him being the hero of Metropolis, he should be the one to handle that problem, which he does run off and try his best to handle that problem. But the thing is, because he used a solar flare earlier when it came to the test the League had gave him, well, he's not at full power. Matter of fact, he's at a weaker state. And the reason why, because his cells are still recharging after he used a solar flare. And so he's not back at full power. And when he runs into the actual problem that's going on in Metropolis, it's a bunch of guys who were able to get their hands on some high-tech weapons. And unfortunately, it does some damage on Superman. Now, once you have our hero jump in, take the hits, and realize that sooner or later he needs to handle this problem, he goes ahead and tries to use the powers he has to handle this situation. But he was barely able to actually defeat some thugs that had some high-tech weapons. Thugs that he would usually be able to handle in a matter of seconds. But again, his cells are drained. He's still recharging, and so he's slower and weaker. But when he tries to fly away, somebody gets a picture of him. And this is why I say this begins the process of the end of the new 52 Superman. But at the same time, it begins the process of him going through the idea of the entire world finding out that he is Clark Kent. Because when he tries to leave, he's leaving very slow, very weak. And the public realize there's something wrong with their hero, Superman. And with the public wondering what is wrong with their hero, well, it gets played across Metropolis. Because not just one person realized, hey, there's something wrong with Superman. Matter of fact, you have a lot of people in Metropolis realize there's something wrong with Superman. Like, what in the world is going on with our hero? But here is the thing, because when he goes back to work at the Daily Planet, and when he walks by Lois Lane, she realized that Clark looks hurt. And the thing is, so does Superman right now on the video footage that's being shown on television. And so this also begins the process of her wondering, is Clark Kent Superman? And so getting into the actual Before the Truth storyline, well, we see Superman wearing just some regular clothes, but he's on an airplane right now. And you're wondering, why in the world is Superman riding on an airplane? And so we have to jump back before everything has changed. And so when we jump back in time, we pick up with Superman getting ready to leave work with his boy Jimmy Olsen. And apparently they're gonna have some nachos for the night, for the big game. Except that is when you have Clark get a text. And when it comes to this text, it's really them saying, we have a big story for you, but you have to follow all my instructions to be able to get this big story. And we come to find out that apparently in Metropolis, somebody has been selling a lot of advanced technology weapons. And matter of fact, we saw that in the last chapter. And so right now you have this person telling Clark, if you want to find out who's doing that, but also give you the chance to show the world that you have the biggest story for Metropolis, you need to follow my instructions very carefully. We did jump over to two guys at a random factory who are beginning the process of trying to make a deal. Now, when it comes to these two guys, one of the guys is actually a general, but not for America, for another country. But the other guy, we have no idea who he is, but apparently he is the one who is making these advanced technology weapons that are being sold across Metropolis, but it also seems across the world. And so right now, you have the general trying to get his hands on some advanced weapons. Now, while you have the two guys begin the process of trying to make this deal go through, well, we see Clark and Jimmy hiding out in a different part of the factory and being able to get some information about this deal. And once they're able to actually publish the story, it is going to ruin this general's career, but also this random guy career as well. But also the world, what's happening right now in Metropolis. There's some guy in Metropolis selling a bunch of weapons. Except while you have Clark and Jimmy trying to gather enough evidence, well, they're caught by some security guards. And that leads into Clark turning into Superman. Because we kind of find out when it comes to the guy who's the one making all the weapons, he's using a 3D printer. And with him being able to use a 3D printer, well, he's able to make so many different kinds of weapons. But once he finds out that Clark, who's right now Superman, is in his factory, he tries to use the robots as a way to take down Superman. Now, Jimmy knows that Clark is Superman. And so for Clark, he has no problem changing into Superman and taking down all these different robots as a way to save his life, but also Jimmy's life as well. But at the same time, they're still able to say, at least we got a story before I destroy this entire factory. And once he does destroy this entire factory, they do go back to the Daily Planet. But the problem is though, it's the way he did destroy this factory, because he had to use a solar flare. And let's not forget, a solar flare leaves them powerless for a certain period of time. And so when Clark and Jimmy arrive back at the Daily Planet, well, they begin the process of trying to put together the actual story, because they have a huge story to tell when it comes to the idea that a bunch of weapons are being made in Metropolis. Except when they do arrive back at the Daily Planet, well, they run into Lois Lane, who's right now wondering what are the two guys up to. Now, after a couple moments, she's able to come find out the two guys have an exclusive story about what happened to the factory that blew up in Metropolis. But at the same time, she does help our two guys figure out who is the guy who was the one making all the weapons. And apparently, it's a guy who just became a brand new senator in the city or the country. Who knows what area. Either way, he is a new senate and he's the one making all the weapons that are being sold in Metropolis. And so you have Lois feel like because she was able to figure out who was the mysterious guy making all those weapons, well, she has right to Jimmy and Clark's story. And so you had the three guys begin to work together to put together the actual story. Now, after Clark Jimmy and Lois were able to put together their story and show Perry what they got, well, Clark gets another text from the same person that had just helped him find the bad guys who were making the illegal weapons in Metropolis. Now, when it comes to Clark, he has no idea who this person is. And matter of fact, he tells the person, I need to know who you are. But the person says, no, I would not tell you who I am. And matter of fact, you have Clark say, well, fine. If that's the case, if you cannot tell me who you are, then we are going to end our conversation. Except that is when you have Clark realize this person has some very valuable information about him. And the information is that they know that he is Superman. And so he begins to freak out. And he realizes that he has no choice but to follow all the directions until he's able to figure out who this person is and to stop that person before they're able to reveal his secret identity. Either way, you do have our mysterious person tell him you have to stop a random blue-haired girl from ruining my plans, because right now she is about to come into the Daily Planet, tell you some kind of story to ruin my chance in what I'm trying to do. All you have to do is give her over to the FBI. And once you do that, then we can move on to the next step. And so you have Clark run over to Jimmy. And this is a good reason, because Jimmy is the only person in the Daily Planet who knows that Clark Kent is Superman. And so it's Clark wondering, hey Jimmy, did you tell anybody that I am Superman? And Jimmy says no, because Jimmy knows how important it is to keep Clark's secret. And so he says, no, Clark, I would never tell your secret. Now, right after Jimmy does that, well, the blue-haired girl that our mysterious character was talking to Clark about does appear in the Daily Planet. And right now, she is talking to Lois Lane. And once you have Clark walk up to Lois and our new mysterious character, we kind of find out her name is Condessa, and apparently she has something very important to tell both Clark and Lois, and also Jimmy, because apparently what she's holding could save a lot of lives. But right when she says that, the FBI walk in, and you have Clark do what the guy told him to do earlier. When the FBI walks in, make sure you hand her over to the FBI. And he did that. But right after he did that, he realized that he may have just made a huge mistake. And so he says, I have to save her. I have to technically get her away from the FBI to figure out what in the world does she know. And so you have Clark begin the process of trying to save Cortessa. The thing is, he still is depowered, not completely depowered, but his cells need to be recharged. And so unfortunately, he can't really go in there just as usual. He has to be somewhat more careful, but at the same time, he's not being careful. It's kind of like he has to understand what his body can do and can't do when his cells are recharging. It's all about learning the limits of his abilities when he's right now trying to be a hero after using a solar flare. Because we do see him try to save Cortessa's life, and you do have the FBI agents shoot at him. It does lead into a whole situation where he does get hurt. He does begin to bleed, and he realized that he's not as durable once he does a solar flare, because again, his cells have to recover. Now, once he's able to save Cortessa, he does meet up with Jimmy Olsen. The problem is, when he does meet up with Jimmy Olsen, well, Lois Lane's in the car because she saw Jimmy just hanging out and wondering what in the world he's up to and why he's parked there for no unknown reason. And so once she sees Clark and also sees Clark is bleeding, but with Cortessa, she realized that Clark just broke her out of FBI custody. Either way, you have him say, we gotta get out of here right now because they're after me and her. And so you have Jimmy leave. But now Lois wondering, what in the world did Clark do? Why in the world Clark just free this random woman for? And so when we jump into the third chapter, we pick up with Cortessa, Jimmy, Lois, and Clark going somewhere else to discuss what she's holding, what kind of information that she's holding on to. And she says that she used to work for a group called Horridor. Honestly, I hate the name a lot. But what she says is that when it comes to Horridor, what they do is that they sell information. But when it comes to gathering information, they try to get the ones that are worthwhile, knowing that it will make a lot of money. And so that would make a lot of sense because remember, our mysterious bad guy could be working for Horridor as well and trying to use the information on Clark, say, hey, I know that you are Superman, as a way to make some huge amount of money. And so while you have Cortessa trying to explain more about this new organization known as Horridor, well, you didn't have a bunch of random robots appear right behind Cortessa, Lois, Jimmy, and Clark. And Clark realized he has no choice but once again to protect his friends and also Cortessa, but he has to use his powers in front of them. And that is a legit problem because when it comes to Clark, yes, Jimmy knows that he is Superman. But with this being the new 52, Lois has no idea that Clark is Superman. Once DC did that reboot, they said, hey, they are not going to get together. But on top of that, she has no idea that he is Superman. But this is the moment where she learns that he is Superman because she's watching him just take out the guys left and right and showing how strong he is, how fast he is. Now, he's still not completely powered up, but he's doing just enough for her to realize, oh my God, Clark has powers. Oh my God, Clark is Superman. And right after you have Clark being able to save Lois, Jimmy, and Cortessa, Lois realized Clark is Superman. And this is huge because at first it's her just saying, I'm a dummy. Because all the different times, the way you had reacted when it came to Superman name being mentioned, or how you disappeared, or when you came to work injured, or when you came to work just kind of too happy, or sad, depressed, literally all the different kinds of clues were there, laid out in front of me. And I realized that you are Superman. And she rips off his actual t-shirt or whatever to reveal his Superman outfit. And this is a huge moment. But Lois is angry because in the new 52, her and Clark were supposed to be close friends, maybe best friends, but not boyfriend and girlfriend. And matter of fact, Homeboy is dating Wonder Woman in the new 52. But either way, she's very upset because Jimmy knows, but she did not know. And she felt like Clark does not trust her enough to keep one of his biggest secrets in the world. Either way, you do have our heroes ask Cortessa, how can we find Horridor? Who's in charge of Horridor? And she says, listen, the person in charge of Horridor is a guy known as Horridor Root. He's the one in charge. But the only way they're able to get onto the actual base of Horridor, they need to have some kind of access code. And when it comes to the access code, well, Cortessa only has one. She needs 3 more. One for Clark, Lois, and also Jimmy. And so she says, once we're able to get copies of my past to help you guys get onto the headquarters or the campus for Horridor, then you'll be able to go after Horridor Root. And so we see our heroes pay a visit to Hiro Okamura. Hiro is actually one of the many Toymans in DC Comics, and he is the smartest child on the planet Earth. Either way, when it comes to him, he should be able to make our heroes 3 more passes to give all 4 friends the ability to access the headquarters that belongs to Horridor. And really, in one single page, he comes right back out and say, hey, here's your 3 new passes. Everybody should be able now to access the island or the headquarters of Horridor, and hopefully you guys be able to take down their boss. And we didn't get the chance to see how advanced Horridor is. Because when our heroes are able to get on the school bus, or regular bus, I want to say school bus, but when they do get on the bus begins to take them over to the actual headquarters of Horridor. And when they arrive, they realize how advanced this place is. But at the same time, it makes sense because this is supposed to be a group of people that is able to gather information about different people and then sell that information to get some money. And so once our heroes arrive, at first it seems like they do fit right in. But then out of nowhere, you have a hologram appear. And when it comes to this hologram, well, you have Horridor Root appear, the leader of Horridor. And when he does appear, he begins to give his daily speech to the people that work for him. And when it comes to Horridor, he literally right off the bat says, hey guys, usually when I appear, I try to give a powerful speech to motivate you guys. Unfortunately, we have 3 friends right now who are intruders on our place. And that would be Lois Lane, Clark Kent, and Jimmy Olsen. Not Cortessa, because she does work for the group. And so her pass is the original security pass. Either way, with their covers being blown, Clark realized he has to protect Jimmy, Lois, but also Cortessa. And so he grabs them and just takes them to a different part on the island that belongs to Horridor. Once they get inside the building, well, you have Clark, Lois, Jimmy, and Cortessa realize that, yeah, Horridor does have a lot of information to use on Clark Kent to show, yeah, man, we know that you are Superman. There's no point of hiding it because with you trying to hide it, we have all this evidence to show that you are Superman. But while our heroes are looking over the evidence, well, then they're confronted by Horridor Root. And with them being confronted by Horridor Root, of course you have Horridor Root say, listen, Clark, or Superman, the reason why I've been testing you or watching you and trying to learn more about you because I'm trying to figure out if you're going to be a great fit for our organization, which this does make sense because Clark is a reporter. And when it comes to being a reporter, your main goal is to always find the evidence, the proof, to prove that something or someone is doing something in the city that you work for. And so when it comes to Clark, it makes sense for him to join an organization like this. People going out of their way to collect information on different people. But at the same time, Horridor is more about the idea of selling that information. With Clark, when he does get information about something or someone, it's to prove they're evil or something bad is happening in Metropolis. There's a huge difference between Horridor and Clark. Either way, you have Clark say, no, I am not going to stand here and let you be this evil person that hurts other people. But then we come to find out Cortessa this entire time has been working for Horridor Root. And so the whole idea of the FBI being after her, yeah, that was fake. It was just a way for Clark to get involved and to bring him here to hopefully be recruited by Horridor Root or to be stopped and defeated by Horridor Root. Either way, you have Clark say, Lois, Jimmy, and Cortessa, really Lois and Jimmy, get out of here. I'm bringing the entire place down. So while you have Clark fighting against the army of robots that was sent by Horridor Root to stop him, you have Jimmy and also Lois have 2 different things happen to them. So while you have Jimmy trying to get out of the factory or the actual Horridor base, he is confronted by Cortessa. And she does tell Jimmy, I'm not completely evil. And matter of fact, yes, I was helping out Horridor Root, but I have my own plans. You're left to wonder what is her own plans. Now back to Lois Lane, she was able to sneak up behind Horridor Root and try to knock him out. Unfortunately, when he does reveal his face, it looks like a young child. But the body he's using right there is not even a real body because it completely disappears. And so Lois was unable to actually grab Horridor Root to learn more about who he is. But getting back over to Clark, Clark realized that the only way to bring down this entire headquarters, this entire base, is to use a solar flare. But that's the problem right there, because Clark has not fully recovered after the last solar flare. And so his cells have not been completely recharged. And so with him doing another solar flare, it is only going to make things worse. But the reason why he's doing that is because he's being overwhelmed by the army of robots that work for Horridor Root. Because again, he has not been completely recharged after the last solar flare. And so when he does this solar flare, he does bring down the entire building. Except when Lois, Jimmy, and Cortessa, when they find him, he's one, naked, but two, he is literally knocked out. He is completely knocked out. And that shows how much energy is being drained from his body when he does a solar flare. And so getting into the next chapter, you have Clark wake up. And when Clark wakes up, he is confronted by Lois laying next to him, but he realized that one, he is naked in bed, and two, she's also in bed with him. And so he does freak out a tad bit. But then he realized that, okay, nothing happened. But on top of that, what happened to me after the solar flare? And so you have Lois say, hey, listen, the last solar flare you did, it knocked you out. It completely drained you. We had to carry you here, put you in a car, and get you over here so that you're able to rest. Now, when it comes to Jimmy, he's all like, yeah, she's right. Like the last solar flare, it did something to you. You were completely drained and completely knocked out for hours. Now you have Lois walk out the room to make some food for everyone, but after she does that, you have Jimmy go over to Clark. And the reason why, because Jimmy feels like it's his fault that Horridor knows the secret identity of Superman, because he feels like maybe he went out there one day and he may have said something that Clark is Superman or Superman is Clark. Either way, he feels like that he may have slipped out the idea that Clark is Superman. And so with him saying that, you have Clark kind of like, dude, there's no way. It really seems more of Horridor just figured it out because of me going slower or just them watching me very closely. Like their whole goal is to get a ton of information to sell. And so of course they worked very hard to get me because I'm one of the heroes, probably the most hero that people wanted to know my true secret identity. Now, after Jimmy and Cortessa walk out the room, it leads into a conversation between Clark and Lois. And when it comes to this conversation, it's really more of Lois going to Clark and saying, hey, I realized something because I remember what my father and Lex did to you when you first appeared in Metropolis. And this is her reminding us some pieces of the origin of the new 52 Superman that was written by Grant Morrison in Action Comics. Either way, she's saying, listen, I remember what they did to you, how horrible it was. But I want you to know, I'm nothing like my father at all. But on top of that, I realize what is the right thing to do here. I am going to keep your secret. You can trust me. And really, this is a great moment because when it comes to Clark, he was very worried about the idea of telling Lois because he felt like Lois might use his big secret as a way to tell one heck of a story so that she'll be able to do some great things in her career down the road or to help save her career. And so to hear her say, I'm going to keep your secret, for Clark, this is an amazing thing. That means now he can trust her and hopefully they can work together once again. We then jump over to the bathroom with Jimmy Olsen and Cortessa, and the reason why, because Jimmy feels a tad bit sick. And so we see him throwing up in the bathroom. And you have Cortessa being there, being that good support, and really, this is kind of showing us that maybe Jimmy and Cortessa might get together. But while you have the two characters walk out of the bathroom after Jimmy had thrown up, well, something jumps out of the toilet. Some kind of small robot. And that small robot is really important. And the reason why, because while you have Lois and Clark hanging out in the bedroom, talking and just becoming good friends or possibly more than friends, well, then you have a small robot appear right in front of Lois and then take over her phone. to show us that, hey, Horridor is not done with him just yet. He's all like, listen, you may have destroyed my entire base, but I kept backup of very important files like yours. And so don't believe that your secret is okay now. No, I was able to keep backups of that secret right there. And so if you don't want the world to find out that you are Superman, you are gonna do what I asked you to do, which right now I want to meet with you at this one location. So go ahead, come over here and we can meet. And you better come here, because if you don't, the entire world is gonna find out. Now, Lois feels like he should not go, but for Clark, he has no choice, because right now, if he doesn't, the entire world is gonna find out that he is Superman. And so you have Clark say, come with me, Lois, because while I keep them busy, I want you to sneak around and find a better way to shut them down once and for all. And so once Clark and Lois arrive at the base of Horridor Root, you have Clark be taken away by some robots, and of course Horridor Root as well, to go ahead and see what he actually wants from Clark. But then you have Lois being left alone, which is honestly not a problem at all, because her goal is completely different from Clark. Her main goal right now is to figure out how to shut down Horridor Root, but to also make sure that Clark's secret does not get out at all. And so while you have Clark being with Horridor Root, you have Lois being able to sneak around the actual facility. But while she is doing that, she's finding a lot of different projects or experiments that was done by Horridor Root. She even finds a dead body. But then she realized what she has to do to free Clark, but to also help Clark be the one to shut down Horridor Root completely. And so we jump over to Clark and Horridor Root, and when we do, we kind of learn a tad bit more about what Horridor Root wants from Clark Kent. And apparently what Horridor Root wants from Clark Kent is to learn more about his solar flare. And that is very important, because it seems like a lot of people, good guys, bad guys, and the public, they knew a lot about the powers of Clark Kent. Like, hey, we need to have flight, super strength, all those different powers, but we had no idea that you were able to do a solar flare. And so Horridor Root wants to know more about this solar flare. And so with that being said, he tells Clark, I brought out these robots and they are able to absorb a lot of solar flare energy. And so with that being said, I want you to go ahead and show me how powerful your solar flare energy is. Now, he does not tell Clark the reason why he wants to know more about the solar flare. He just says, I want to learn more about it. And at first, you have Clark say no, because Clark's kind of like, I'm done playing your games, I'm going to shut you down. But then you have Horridor Root say, if you try to attack me, innocent people are going to die. The ones close to you are going to die. So you better go ahead and do what I asked you to do so that they can live. And you have Clark realize he has no choice. And so Clark does use his solar flare. Now, while he does use his solar flare, you have Lois Lane walk out and say, Clark, you can stop and go ahead and take him down. And the reason why? Because I told the entire world your secret. The entire world knows that Clark Kent is Superman. You're kind of like, why in the world would she do that? But in her mindset, it was the only option that she could do. And the reason why? Because then Clark can no longer be controlled by Horridor Root. Now he can go ahead and take down Horridor Root and his entire facility. But you now have Clark being very angry at Lois Lane, because now the entire world knows that he is Superman. And he says, you had no right to share my secret. It is my secret. And you promised me that you would keep my secret. And she's kind of like, I had no choice. I saved your life and possibly the others as well. You're now a free man. But it's Clark saying, you now put everyone I care for in danger, because now the entire world knows that I am Superman, which means that my bad guys will sooner or later come after you and the rest of my friends to get to me. And right after he says that, General Lane appears, Lois Lane's father. And when he does appear, let's not forget, there's bad blood between him and Clark. And of course, he's kind of like, hey, Clark Kent, Superman, you are under arrest by the US military. And he comes out almost full force to try to arrest Clark Kent. And when we jump into the final chapter for Before Truth, this proves what Clark meant earlier to Lois Lane, that his life is technically over. And the reason why, because when we jump into the final chapter, there is a time jump. And we see Clark trying to live a quiet life, a quiet Clark Kent life. But unfortunately, he can't do that no longer, because the entire world now knows that he is Superman. And so while you have him just walking around town, minding his business, he is attacked by the Royal Flush Gang. And when it comes to the Royal Flush Gang, they're not really that popular in DC Comics. I mean, thanks to Batman Beyond, they have begun to pop up even more than they did before the actual TV show. But because of the TV show, you do have these characters pop up left and right. And usually you have different versions of these characters. And matter of fact, when it comes to the New 52, I want to say this is the third version of this team. Either way, they go after Clark Kent. And this shows that Clark can no longer have a private life, a quiet life, because now everyone knows that he is Superman. And so you have Clark have to be Superman and take out the Royal Flush Gang, and he does. And really, that trend continues, because we pick up with Livewire. And Livewire, one of those characters that got really popular in the Superman animated series, but unfortunately in comics, she never got that popular. But the problem is, she's going after somebody not really close to Clark Kent, but Clark Kent knows that person because they work together at the Daily Planet. Either way, with him knowing this person, now his life is in danger, because you have all these bad guys going after people to just get to Clark. And so that is why Clark was so scared of the idea of the world finding out that he is Superman, because now people close to him are being attacked. They're being hunted down to hopefully get to him. And so you have Clark being able to take down Livewire. And the thing is, this person right here is not that close to Clark, but at the same time, they still got hunted by a bad guy to get to Clark. So what happens when it comes to somebody who's really close to Clark Kent? And so we jump over to Lois Lane and her father, General Lane. And when we do, this is really more of the General not realizing why Lois did what she did. What I mean by that is, when it comes to the General, he feels like the reason why Lois told the story about Clark Kent being Superman was to get a great story. Probably the best story in a very long time. But the thing is, the reason why she did that was to help Clark Kent out when it came to defeating Horror. And that is very important, because to the General, he's like, dude, you should celebrate. You have the best story of all time right now. You told the world the true secret of Superman. That is a great thing. But in her mind, it is not a great thing. Either way, you do have the news right now reporting that apparently the Daily Planet has been taken over by a different set of bad guys. And so when it comes to Livewire, Livewire was just one bad guy. There are others in there who had taken the entire staff of the Daily Planet as hostages. And so Clark Kent is trying to save all his co-workers, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, and the list goes on and on and on. And this is another example of the idea of why it's such a bad idea for Clark Kent's secret to be out there, because now everybody close to him is being attacked. And matter of fact, you had this random bad guy who gets mad at Superman because of one of the past battles that he was involved in. And what I mean by that is, Superman had fought against a lot of different bad guys in Metropolis, out Metropolis, across the world, whatever. But apparently this one particular bad guy who knew Clark so well, but he also was mad at Superman. And the reason why he was mad at Superman is because when he came to one of his battles, this guy's wife died. And so because of that, he blamed Superman. And so when he found out that Clark Kent, the guy that he was working with, was actually Superman, he said, I came here to get my revenge against you. Because of you, I lost my wife. Now, You have Clark being able to stop him, except the guy had a gun, and he used that gun to try to hit Clark, but unfortunately he missed Clark and shot Perry White. And so Perry White, Clark's boss of the Daily Planet, has now been shot. And Perry doesn't die, but here's the thing, because with Perry getting hurt, it shows what happens to people who are close to Clark. And matter of fact, you're going to have people begin the process of moving away from Clark because they're afraid of getting hurt. And so you have Clark kind of like, hey, Perry, I heard you got shot. Oh, I saw you got shot, and I want to make sure you're okay. But you have Perry say, dude, get out of here. Like, it's thanks to you I got shot. It's thanks to you that your co-workers got hurt, or kidnapped, or held hostage. It's all because of you. You have to realize, with your secret being out there, you can no longer have a private life, a quiet life. The entire world knows who you are. So get out of here. Stay away from us so that we will not be harmed because of you. And so you have Clark meet up with Jimmy Olsen. And when they do, this is really more Clark trying to record a message. And his message is going to be played across the entire world or really Metropolis. Either way, when it comes to this message, it's Clark saying, listen, I know that everyone knows that I am Superman. They know Clark Kent is Superman. Here's the thing. I'm not okay with people coming after my friends and family. And so this is only your warning. Your only warning you're going to get. If you come after anybody that's close to me, I will bring the hurt right back to you, but 1,000 times worse. And so this is your only and final warning. Now, after that, you then have Lois confront Clark. But let's not forget, right now between the two characters, Clark is mad at Lois because she did share his secret. And so it's Clark saying, listen, I realize I'm going to have to operate in a different kind of way. But at the same time, in that basement, when I use my solar flare to show Horridor Root what my new power can do on his robots, I realize something happened to me. I'm not getting all my powers back like I should. And that is a problem. And so most definitely, I'm going to have to operate differently if I still want to be a hero. You have him fly off, but it does show that right now between him and Lois, there is a lot of bad blood. But we did pick up with Horridor Root one last time. And when we do, we see them right now going to an undisclosed location. And we come to find out that Horridor Root has transferred his mind into a new body. But he talks with his assistant Yuri about being discarded by his father. And he's trying to prove to his father that he can live up to the family legacy. As he opens up a gate, we see some mysterious shadow creature. And we have no idea what this creature is. But you have Horridor Root says, I promise I am going to turn Superman onto our side to help us remake the world for our cause. And the last page really shows that Clark Kent and Lois Lane are no longer on the same page, are no longer friends. And the reason why, because a couple of days have passed by and you have Lois being able to find Clark at a motel, and she wants to make sure that he is okay. She wants to help him by giving him some cash or give him some food. And he says, go away, because it's your fault what happened to me. You told the world my secret. You felt like it was a great idea to share my secret because you thought you were actually helping me. But in reality, you're only helping yourself. And she admits that she should have found a different way. But the thing is, she did not. And so this shows, did she truly care for Clark's secret, or did she use Clark's secret to help her career? What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay guys, so we are going to continue our coverage over the new 52 Superman, and we pick up with Action Comics Volume 8. When it comes to Volume 8, this takes place in the era where Superman was powerless. Let me explain. See, he had a new power given to him, which was the solar flare. And when it came to the solar flare, he was able to release a huge amount of energy. The problem was, after doing that, he'll be technically powerless until his cells were able to recharge with solar energy. Once they do, he was back to our old Superman. Except the last time he used a solar flare, well, it left him mostly powerless. Not completely, but mostly. But on top of that, Lois Lane told the entire world that he was Superman. And so right now you have almost everybody coming after Clark Kent, and he has to go away from Metropolis for the time being. But at the same time, he is trying to go to the Fortress of Solitude, a safe area for him and only him because he is Kryptonian. And when it comes to him traveling over to the Fortress of Solitude, this is not going to be an easy task for him at all, for two different reasons. Now, the first reason is because he lost his powers. See, usually with his powers, it was so easy to travel over to the Fortress of Solitude. But now he lost most of those powers, like flying and also super speed. And so now he has to travel a different kind of way. But on top of that, he has to get used to the idea of him almost being basically human, because now the way there is not an easy path for him anymore. Now, while he is traveling, he is attacked by a bunch of different kinds of shadow creatures. And these shadow creatures are going to be very important for today's video. Either way, while he is traveling, he's trying his best to get through them. But of course, they are giving him a hard time. Now, because he does have a little bit of super strength, he was able to fight his way through the shadow figures. And once he does that, he's then able to continue on to his travels for the Fortress of Solitude. Unfortunately, when he does reach the Fortress of Solitude, well, the fortress does not let him inside at all. Matter of fact, it says, "We have scanned you, and we realize you are not Kal-El. You are not Kryptonian. We have no idea who you are. But we do see that you are holding on to the Kryptonian suit that was given to Kal-El." Of course, they're talking about his Superman suit. They even said also the cape as well. And so you have the fortress begin to take every single thing away from Clark Kent, because right now the fortress believes that he is not Kal-El. And so we're left to believe that thanks to his last solar flare, it basically got rid of his Kryptonian DNA. Not completely, but mostly, because now he's powerless, but also he's not allowed inside the Fortress of Solitude. And so as we jump into the next chapter, well, we pick up with Clark Kent now traveling across the globe. Not the globe, really more just of North America. But either way, because he's no longer allowed inside the Fortress of Solitude, he has to go somewhere else. But the question is though, where? And so as he travels around the world, he does run into different kind of things happening to him. He does meet some great people. He also meets some bad people, but either way, he still has to just move on. Now, while he is traveling across North America, well, that is when he has Jimmy Olsen call him to say, "You need to come back home. Something is happening right now in Metropolis. We need you here." Now, he's kind of worried about going back there. And the reason why, because again, Lois Lane told the entire world that Clark Kent is Superman. He is wanted by the police, by bad guys, and the list goes on and on. But unfortunately for Clark Kent, he's all like, listen, Metropolis is my other home. I have been there so long protecting it. If anything bad is happening there, I need to go back and help out. And I still have my powers to use to help protect that city. And matter of fact, when he does arrive into Metropolis, well, he's confronted by the police department of Metropolis. And they're like, "Oh, it's Clark Kent, it's Superman. bring him down fast, because you are wanted here in Metropolis for so many different things. And unfortunately, we gotta lock you up. Now, I say unfortunately, but you do have some cops, especially one who's really big on the idea of just arresting Superman like he never did anything good for this city. Except that is when you have the sergeant get a call from somebody else and say, hey, I know that's Clark Kent, I know he is Superman, but go ahead and let him inside the city. And so you actually do have the police department step down to let Clark inside the city. Now with that happening, you can tell the police is now working for somebody else, possibly somebody evil. Either way, once Clark is able to get into Metropolis, he is confronted by Jimmy Olsen, and now you have Clark say, hey, what in the world is going on here, Jimmy? What's so important for me to come back to Metropolis? And this is really a great moment because you have Jimmy take Superman to his old neighborhood in Metropolis to show that not everybody in Metropolis hates Superman, that you do have some people who actually do look up to him and stand with him, saying that even though he did bring a lot of drama to Metropolis, Lex Luthor, Brainiac, and the list goes on, he also did other things to help protect Metropolis. And so when it comes to the people in his old neighborhood, they have a huge parade going on right now just for Clark Kent to say, we stand with Superman no matter what. And for Clark, this is a great thing because honestly, he's going across the world saying that I have no one on my side except Jimmy. Everybody in the world hates me for different reasons. But then you realize that that's not true. You have some people out there who stand with you because of what you did, what you have done for this city. And so he's now just having a good time celebrating with the people of his old neighborhood. And that is when he is confronted by a new character known as Lee Lambert. And when it comes to Lee Lambert, she is the chief of the fire department. With that being said, she's right now coming over to Clark and saying, listen, what you did for this area is great because I was a young girl living here. While growing up, I realized this was the rough area of Metropolis, but thanks to you, you made this area a whole lot better. Unfortunately, it got in bad again once your secret got out to the entire world, because now you have people scared to just go outside because they are afraid they could be hurt by some random bad guy looking for you, or possibly just trying to get to you in some kind of way. But at the same time, crime has also gone up. And for Clark, he's saying, unfortunately, I am sorry about that, but I can't do anything about that because it wasn't me who shared my secret. It was Lois Lane. But for Lee, it's kind of like, oh well, because of your secret, this area has begun the process of going back down again. And people are terrified. But then that is the moment Lee does get a call on her radio about something happening at the docks. And so you have Clark take her radio and begin the process of still trying to be Superman. Even though he's powerless, he still says, there are people who need my help, a city that needs my help. And so I will do my best to protect this city. And so when Clark arrives at the docks, he realized the entire docks have been set on fire. The entire area set to blaze. And so he's trying his best to figure out what in the world happened here. He also sees some members of the fire department trying their best to put out the fire. Unfortunately, they're having a hard time doing that. And the reason why? Because there is another shadow figure, except this one is a whole lot bigger and a whole lot more crazier. And so for Clark, he realized something or someone must be following him back to Metropolis, because the last time he saw these shadow creatures was back on his way over to the Fortress of Solitude. But now he's back in Metropolis, and here they are again. Either way, you have Clark say, I have to do what I have to do, which is still be a hero and protect these innocent people. And so he tries his best to begin the process of fighting against this monster. Except while he's doing that, we jump back over to the police department. The ones who technically at first did not let Clark come into Metropolis, but now they have been given new orders, which is go ahead and shut down that whole parade that is going on in the old neighborhood of Clark Kent, because they did not get approved to do that in their area at all. But at the same time, because they're supporting Clark Kent, it most definitely has to be shut down. And so when it comes to the battle between Superman and this new shadow creature, he realized this is not going to be an easy task. Now, honestly, he already knew that it was not going to be an easy task. But at the same time, it's still Clark Kent. He still believes that he has to do the right thing. But now he's realizing that doing the right thing is not going to be that easy. Honestly, he is struggling a lot, but he doesn't give up. He keeps pushing forward. He tries his best to say, you know what? I have to protect the people of Metropolis. And so while he tries to find different ways to stop the creature is giving him one heck of a hard time. But Clark is not giving up. And you have Clark being able to actually find a way to stop the creature. And once he does that, okay, it's now time for him to head back to his old neighborhood. And speaking of his old neighborhood, you have the police just moving in and saying, shut everything down now. Everybody go home before we have to arrest you. Now, you do have the people of the old neighborhood of Superman say, we are not going to do that. Like, this was a peaceful parade. Now it's turned into a protest. You guys are just upset about the idea that we were supporting Superman, somebody that you guys hate. We don't hate him. Matter of fact, we stand with him. And so now we realize if anybody stands with him, you are going to try to bring us down. And matter of fact, they're right. And so the parade has turned into a protest. You have people sit down as a way to say, we stand with Superman. Now, there's a hothead known as Dante, where at first he's more of, let's go ahead and attack the police. But then you have Lee say, that is a bad idea. We are not going to attack the police at all. We're going to sit right here to show them we are not crazy people. We're not bad people. But at the same time, we stand with Superman. Now, you have police say, fine, if that's the case, we'll go ahead and arrest you. But then you have Clark reappear by bringing a huge chain and throwing it across the area saying, you may not cross that chain at all. They stand with me, so I stand with them. And this is a great moment because it's Clark saying, you have no right to come here to shut down parade or a neighborhood party because you guys hate them because they love me. That right there is not okay at all. Either way, you do have the officers tell Clark, you got two options. Go ahead and stand down and come with us, or get beat down and still come with us. Either way, you're coming with us. It's just that one way is nicer than the other. But we have Clark say no, because again, you guys are being the bullies. Unfortunately, it does lead into the officers calling in a SWAT team. And when they come in, well, it leads into the police department beating down on Superman. And that upsets the people of his old neighborhood so much, especially Dante the hothead. But the point is that with that happening, you then have the people of the old neighborhood get very upset. And the police begins to attack them as well. And then they have to fight back as well. It leads into a huge brawl in the middle of this old neighborhood. And with that happening, Clark realized he has no choice but to once again fight. He was trying to do this in a peaceful way, but unfortunately, the peaceful way is not going to work. And so you have Clark just punch the officer in charge to say, you are not going to hurt these people. But this leads into another problem. See, after Superman had punched the cop in the face, the one in charge of the crowd police officers who were trying to shut down the old neighborhood's parade, well, we come to find out the police officer is a shadow creature. And so it leads to more questions of what in the world is going on here. And so for Superman, his main goal now is to protect the people, both the officers and the people of the old neighborhood, from this officer who's really more of a bad guy, a shadow creature. And this does go on for a few good pages, but as the fight goes on, when it comes to Lee, she does get stabbed in the arm by this police officer who's more of a shadow creature. Now we still have no idea what is the proper name for these shadow creatures. All we know is that they're connected to one another somehow. We have no idea how yet. Either way, it does come to Clark Kent being able to punch the officer, but the police officer is killed by his own officers when they unload their guns into him, shooting him non-stop until he actually dies. But then after he dies, he disappears. The only thing left is his clothes. Now, after that incident right there, you didn't have the mayor get word of what Jimmy Olsen did, because with Jimmy being there at the scene of the crime, Jimmy was able to get some pictures, and then you had Jimmy upload those photos to his website, where now you have millions of people being able to actually watch and see what happened in Metropolis. And now those people are wondering, hey, what in the world is going on in Metropolis? Now with that happening, of course, the mayor got word. The mayor of Metropolis. Now this is our first time getting a look at this character. As a matter of fact, we don't know her actual name just yet. All we know is her name is the mayor of Metropolis. But with her seeing what happened in her city and wondering how many people saw what happened in her city, she calls up Clark Kent. Now, when she does call up Clark Kent, it's Clark saying, hey, listen, Mayor, what you saw was me trying to be a hero, me trying to protect Metropolis. And she says, I'm trying to do the same thing as well. The difference is, though, you are a target. Because right now, the entire world knows that you are Clark Kent, that you are Superman. And so with those things being out there, you have become a target. You are actually making things worse with you being in Metropolis. And so I'm asking you to go ahead and leave, because if you leave, then I can do a better job protecting the people of Metropolis. Now, after his phone call with the mayor, you then have Clark go around and make sure that everybody is okay. Because when it came to that police officer that was a shadow creature, he did hurt a lot of people, especially Lee, the fire chief who was there at the scene. Now, luckily for her, she was just stabbed, but her stab wound is going to be very important for later chapters down the road. But luckily for Clark, no one died. Yes, you did have few people get hurt, but again, no one died. Now, you do have Jimmy say, hey, let's go ahead and take you back home to your old apartment. As a matter of fact, Clark agrees, except when they walk in, someone has been through his entire apartment, trashed the place, and then at the very bottom, they have spray painted "Go Home Alien" to show that there are some people in Metropolis who do not like Superman at all. And matter of fact, when they found he was Clark Kent and he was an alien, they're all like, you do not belong here at all. Go back to where you came from. And so this hurts Clark a lot, especially the idea that a lot of his stuff got ruined. Even a photo of his parents. Now, when it came to the new 52 for Clark Kent in his new timeline, his parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, they died. And so it hurts him even more to find a photo of them halfway destroyed. But luckily, he still has it and he's still able to see his parents. But after that, you then have Clark meet up with everybody from his old neighborhood, where he does explain that his end goal is to actually stay here in Metropolis to be the hero they need. Except he says, I cannot be there every single second. I'm not as fast as I used to be. I'm not as strong as I used to be or durable, but I'm still going to try my best. But I'm also asking you guys to also protect yourselves. And you have everybody in his old neighborhood say, yes, we can do that. We can protect ourselves, but at the same time, help you out. to protect our city, to protect our neighborhood. And so it seems like a very great moment. We then jump over to the mayor's office. And when we do, this gives us our confirmation that the mayor is actually the one behind everything going on in this storyline, because you do have an officer go by the mayor's office, and to this officer is going to be just a regular meeting, except when she walks in, we kind of find out the mayor is the one controlling the shadow creatures. And so she's right now trying to capture this police officer. And this officer does the right thing. She freaks out and she begins to shoot the mayor. But of course, nothing is happening to the mayor. But luckily for the officer, Clark was there, because Clark was on his way to have a meeting with the mayor. And so as soon as he appears, he sees what's happening. And he now knows the mayor is the one who has been controlling the actual shadow creatures. And as we jump into the final chapter of the story, we kind of find out that the mayor's name, or her bad guy name, is actually Wrath. With that being said, when it comes to Wrath, she does control these shadow creatures, but it also seems like she does feed off people's fear, their anger. And so when it comes to the people, the innocent people, she's feeding off their fear. When it comes to Superman, well, of course, she's feeding off his anger, because so many innocent people were hurt that Superman is very angry at her, but she's just feeding off of it, getting stronger and making herself harder to actually defeat. And things only get worse in the city, because when we jump over to the old neighborhood that Clark was living in, we pick back up with Lee Lambert, who's just trying to help clean up the area after what happened with the police officers. Except that is the moment you have a bunch of innocent people begin to change. And we kind of find out they also been possessed by Wraith in some kind of shadow creature symbiote kind of way, where now all these innocent people are turning into more shadow creatures, and they're about to attack the innocent people who are unaffected by the mayor. And so you have Lee, Dante, and also Jimmy saying we have to work together to stop this crowd before things get out of hand. And so now you have a whole-on battle in the old neighborhood of Clark Kent. And the next section really does jump back over to Superman fighting against Wraith. And while you have Superman fighting against Wraith, you see how strong she is, because no matter what he does, she's getting stronger and stronger, making herself a stronger opponent for Superman. But on top of that, he has to worry about the innocent people who are right now being affected by her shadow creatures. Now, you do have these innocent people tell him, hey, do not worry about us at all. Deal with her, because right now, if you don't stop her, literally Metropolis is going to be in trouble. So focus on her. And so of course he does focus on her, and the fight continues on. But getting back over to Lee Lambert, we see that Lee is also being changed into a shadow creature. Now, we saw her get stabbed earlier, and this is where her stab wound comes very important, because with her being stabbed earlier, that's where the infection begins. And so it does seem like she is beginning to be taken over by this shadow creature. With that happening right there, we do see her head towards a building on fire right now. And we're left to believe that she had destroyed the entire building that was caught on fire. And then she comes out from a different building, and it seems like she is going to continue her attack. Now, when Clark does arrive, Clark realizes that she's not being controlled. That matter of fact, she actually has control over her own body, because she used the powers of the shadow creature, or the symbiote creature, as a way to help free the people who were trapped in the building that was on fire, by giving them a different path through a different building as a way out of the burning building. And so she was basically using her powers for good. And once she's able to get complete control of her body, she calls out for Clark and say, hey, don't worry, I have control over this. Now, this is very huge, because the other people who were infected, of course, they were not able to control their dark side, their shadow figure or symbiote figure. When it comes to Lee, she was able to do it. But the question is, how? How was she able to do this? But with the mayor disappearing and everybody calming down, the battle is over. And with the battle being over, you didn't have everyone begin the process of just cleaning up the neighborhood. After dealing with the police officers, but also the mayor's attack, this area has been wrecked. And so you have everybody just chipping in, trying to clean up the area. But this is also Superman saying, I have to stay here. This city needs me. This area needs me. Now, yes, I'm not the old Superman like I was a few months ago, but I'm still Superman, and I stand for something. I brought hope wherever I went to, and my goal is to bring the hope back to Metropolis. So I am going to stay here in Metropolis and still be the Superman this city needs. But speaking of Wraith, we see her go to a different area in Metropolis. Now, when she does go to this different area in Metropolis, she goes to a random hotel where she does walk into a hotel room. But when she does ask somebody in this room, are you ready? Now, when it comes to this room, it doesn't look like your normal room. It seems some kind of like out of time kind of room, because the person that she's talking to appears out of nowhere and says, I have been waiting for 2,000 years. Please tell me that our path is clear. Speaking of their future. And she says, yes, everything should be ready to go. And we see her begin the process of grabbing souls around her in this one area of Metropolis. As we're left to wonder, who is Wraith and who is she working with? And what is their end goal? Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over New 52 Superman. And right now we are covering the Truth era of Superman comics. And what I mean by that, see, at the tail end of the New 52 Superman, he was powerless. You see, he gained a new ability known as the solar flare. And with the solar flare, he will release a huge amount of energy. And with that huge amount of energy, he would be completely drained. His cells would be drained. And so he had to recharge like he is a solar battery. But once he does recharge, he's back to his old Superman ways. Except the problem was, the last time he did a solar flare, something happened to him. Something changed in him, where technically he's now more powerless than he ever has been in the past. And his powers are not coming back like they should. He does have some of his powers, but not all of them. And so this is more of a weaker state Superman still trying to be a hero. But when it came to the New 52, he had a whole bunch of different titles going on at the same time. You had Superman, you had Action Comics, you had Batman and Superman, and you also had Superman and Wonder Woman. And all four different books kind of dealt with the idea of him being powerless in different kinds of ways. Now, today's video, we're gonna focus on Superman and Wonder Woman, because we cannot forget, in the New 52, these two characters, they were dating. They were the power couple in the New 52 era of DC Comics. And the question is right now, how is Diana handling the idea that her boyfriend, Superman, is not the man he used to be? He's now more powerless here it has been in the past. And now it's up to her to kind of help protect him, but at the same time making sure that he is okay mentally. And so when it comes to the opening pages of today's storyline, we pick up with Superman and Wonder Woman being in bed together. And really, it's her kind of having these different flashbacks of the different things they had to go through as a power couple. But at the same time telling us that when they first met, it was just two different people from two different worlds who were just friends. But later on, they fell in love with one another and formed the power couple we know we have here in the New 52. Either way, you do have her kind of realize that she now has to take care of the man who used to be unbreakable. He was unbeatable. He was so powerful, and now he's not as powerful as he used to be. And so it's her saying that no matter what, she'll still be there for him. Yes, he has changed, but she did not fall in love with the idea of his powers. She fell in love with the person he is. And honestly, that right there is not that bad. It really shows that she really cares for Clark Kent. Either way, that is when his phone begins to ring. Now, most times, any girlfriend, if your phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning and another girl's calling you, of course, she might have some questions. But for Diana, she's all like, listen, I know you have all these different kind of female friends, so I'm not going to trip. And matter of fact, I'm going to lay here and just let you answer the phone. Now, when Clark does answer the phone, it is Lana Lang. Now, let's not forget, Lana Lang is Clark Kent's first crush. But at the same time, she was the first person outside the Kents to find out that Superman had powers. And so because of that, these two characters have a very close bond. But when she does call up Clark, she's calling for help. Somebody had broke into her parents' house when her and her boyfriend John Henry were just stopping by. But something happened to John, and now they're coming after her, and she's asking for Clark's help. Unfortunately though, the call ends, and so Clark and Diana have no choice but to head over to Smallville. Now, Diana has to carry Clark because, like I said earlier, this is a depowered Superman. Not completely, but mostly. And so right now, Homeboy cannot fly. Also, he cannot run as fast as he used to. And so it's up to Diana to carry her man over to his hometown, Smallville. And once you have Clark and Diana arrive at the home of Lana Lang parents, you have Clark and Diana begin to freak out for a very good reason, because when they do arrive, they cannot find any clues to tell them what happened to Lana Lang nor John Henry. On top of that, the house is so clean, it looks like nobody has ever been there in a very long time. Now, for Clark Kent, he begins to freak out for a very good reason, because he still blames himself for the death of Lana Lang parents. See, they died back in the Superman Doom event when Brainiac had attacked the Earth, especially Smallville, and they died. And so ever since then, he blamed himself for their death. And so with Lana missing, is him saying, I have failed her again. I cannot protect the one person I care for a lot. Now, this is where you have Diana figure out that when it comes to Lana, she was Clark's first crush, but also the first person to find out about the powers of Clark Kent. But she helped Clark control his powers. And so it's Diana realizing how special Lana is to Clark. And so you have Diana say, I'm going to stay with you and keep helping you to find Lana Lang. And so you have the two characters go in town to see if anybody saw anything and also find any other clues to help them find Lana and John. Now you do have Diana and Clark go into Smallville undercover, because we have to remember at this point in the New 52, the entire world knows that Clark Kent is Superman thanks to Lois Lane. She felt like she was helping Clark out by telling the world that he was Superman, but at the same time, the only thing she did is put his life in danger, but everyone around him as well. It's really a dumb idea. Either way, when it comes to Clark and Diana, when they arrive in town, they try to act like some random two people who just arrived in the city. Except the problem is, Smallville is a small town. Everybody knows Clark, no matter what he looks like. And so when you have Clark over to two guys who may know what happened to Lana, they call him out saying, dude, Clark, stop. We know it's you. Stop trying to be Mr. Undercover. Just go ahead and reveal yourself. And you have Clark say, fine, okay. Either way, you have the two guys tell Clark they have no idea what happened to Lana nor John. But at the same time, they tell Clark, listen, this city is not mad at you at all with the whole idea that you are Superman. And matter of fact, we still believe that you are a great person, that you are somebody that will do the right thing no matter what. And also, we kind of understand why you had a secret identity. But at the same time, we have no idea what happened to Lana nor John. But then you have this old man, Hank Clark, his family's old mailbox, saying that he found it in the middle of the road. And that is very confusing. Why was his family old mailbox left in the middle of the road somewhere else completely different in Smallville? And so you have Clark and Diana go over to where the Kent's farm used to be at. Now we have to remember, in the New 52, one of the biggest change in the New 52 was Clark's parents both being dead. So technically at this point in time, Clark's parents are dead and long gone. The farm was just left there for him to go back to every once in a while. Except when he goes back this time, the entire house has been technically taken. It's completely gone. The barn as well, which means that somebody is doing this as a way to get to Clark. With Lana, with John, and now his entire family house being gone, the question is, who is doing this? Now, you also see other farm places have also been taken as well, the neighboring farms to the Kents. And the question is, are they also being involved in Clark Kent's mess right now? Now, you have Clark being able to find the old bunker that belonged to his grandfather. And with that old bunker, it's just Clark telling us that when he first discovered his powers, he was able to find his old bunker and he would just hide there until he was able to get his powers back in control. Now, with that being said, with the farm being taken away completely, Clark wonders what happened to his family graves, and so he goes over to Smallville Cemetery. And when he arrives to his parents' graves, their coffins have also been taken as well. And he's left to wonder who in the world is going around taking different things that belongs to Clark Kent's life. Why are they doing this for? But that is when you have Clark and Diana turn around, and when they do, they are confronted by the Suicide Squad. Now, with the Suicide Squad being here, now we're left to wonder, is Amanda Waller involved in some kind of way with the disappearance of Lana Lang and John Henry, but also the farm that used to belong to the Kents? And why in the world is she coming after Clark Kent for? Either way, we're about to have a Superman Wonder Woman fight against the Suicide Squad. But then we jump into the second chapter of the storyline, where we pick up with Superman and Wonder Woman working together to fight against the Suicide Squad. Now, like I said earlier, Superman has been depowered, yes, but not to the point where he's basically weak. He still has some powers, it's just that he's not as strong as he used to be. And so when it comes to this battle, it's actually a challenge for him. Because honestly, if Clark was at full power again, he would take out the Suicide Squad very easily, except right now he is not. And so they are very strong opponents for him and Diana. And matter of fact, this fight does go on for a few pages, but it leaves you wondering, how is Amanda Waller involved in this mess? Why is the Suicide Squad here for? Either way, you do have our two heroes being able to actually defeat the Suicide Squad. But here comes the next problem, because right after they do that, well, you did have the book tell us that Clark is seriously injured. Not to the point where he could die, but of course, again, with him being depowered to a lower state, his body is not as durable as it used to be. And so some of the bullets that Deadshot used did a number on Clark. And so they had to go back to his old grandfather's bunker to hide out there so that he's able to somewhat recover. Now, once you do have our heroes leave, that is the moment we kind of find out that Amanda Waller is technically not involved in this mess like you thought she would be. That apparently she was forced to send in the Suicide Squad by somebody else. But once they have lost, this guy hangs up the call on Amanda Waller and then says, "Protocol secure." And now we're left to wonder, what does that mean? And who is this new random character? Either way, you have Diana and Clark go back over to the bunker that belongs to his grandfather. But once they get back to the bunker, this is where you have the book show how worried Diana is. And what I mean by that, Diana is saying that if Deadshot has some kind of bullets that were able to hurt Clark, that means that sooner or later, different kinds of enemies, different kinds of governments are going to continue to make different kinds of weapons as a way to use on Clark Kent to hopefully kill him off. And Deadshot is just the first example. And so she's trying her best to tell Clark, you need to take it slow, because right now you're trying to be a hero still, but we have no idea what's wrong with your powers. And until we know what's wrong with your powers and how strong you are, you should slow down until you're able to properly heal after every single battle. Because you have to realize, you've never been in this state before, where you've been this powerless and you still had to fight and taking the hits you have been taking, which of course does damage to your body. But for Clark Kent, he's more of, no, I have to keep fighting. I have to find Lana Lang. I have to find John Henry. But then you have Clark realize where he has to go. And once he realized that, he tells Diana, please do not follow me. Matter of fact, stay here while I go and handle this problem on my own. And we're left to wonder, okay, where is Clark going? Because just like that, he realized where he has to go to figure out what happened to Lana Lang, what happened to John Henry, and why in the world was Suicide Squad coming after him for. And so you have Clark Kent go over to the White House. And when he does go over to the White House, you know what that means. You know who he is trying to see, because he realized who could most likely be behind the actual attack. And that's when he says, hey, I came here to talk to the president. And so as we jump into the third chapter of the storyline, we pick up with Steve Trevor instead of the president, because they knew that Clark was coming here, and so they had the president move somewhere else very secure. Either way, when it comes to Clark Kent, well, now he has a chance to talk to Steve Trevor. Now, at this point in DC Comics, Steve was working for Argus. Argus is one of the many different government agencies out there in DC Comics. Either way, when it came to Argus and Steve Trevor, they felt like they had the right to make a move on Clark Kent. And what I mean by that, ever since the entire world found out that Clark was Superman, well, the government felt like Clark lied to them. And what I mean by that, they felt like Clark was Superman day and night, that his day job and night job was being Superman. But when the world found out that he was Clark Kent, they're like, why do you have a secret identity for? Why were you hiding your secret life for? What were you planning? They felt like he could have had some kind of secret plan to overthrow the government. Now, we already know that is not true for Clark Kent. The reason why he had this secret life was to get away from the superhero world every once in a while. But for Steve Trevor and Argus, they don't believe that at all. We also kind of find out that Lana Lang and John Henry were not the only two people who were kidnapped. We kind of find out Lois Lane, Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Clark's old teacher, other people who are friends with Clark have all been kidnapped. Now, the reason why, because it's technically Argus saying if Clark had lied about his life as Superman, then what if the people around him also lied to cover up his tracks? And that means they could also be trying to help him overthrow the government as well. But again, we all know that is not true. But for Argus and Steve Trevor, they believe that hardcore. And so while you have our two characters discussing the idea that Clark lied to the American government, well, we kind of find out at the other base where the people who are close to Clark are being held at, well, they're currently being saved by Wonder Woman. And that is a great thing. But here's the big question though. How did she know where to go? Because if that's the case, why did she not tell Clark where to go to find his loved ones? And so while you have her trying to break them out, you have Clark and Steve talk to one another about the idea that the reason why Clark lied to the world. And again, we already know why. Because he wanted a life away from the superhero world. But Steve cannot fully understand that. As a matter of fact, to Steve, he believes if you are going to be a hero, you should not have a secret life. Because why do you need one? What are you hiding? You are a hero to the world. And so for Clark, it's kind of like, that's your problem, because you're not out there all the time fighting against different things and not realizing that sometimes us heroes need a break from that life. Either way, while you have the two characters talking to one another, that is when you have the actual president walk in. And I want to say this is Obama. He looks just like him. And so when it comes to Obama, you have him say, hey, listen, Clark, let me explain to you why we did what we did. Because let's look at the past. We had many different things pop off left and right. Doomsday, Brainiac twice, Hell, the Crime Syndicate. 4 different things popped off left and right, all because of you. And there are many, many more things because of you. And so with those things being said, the reason why we did what we did, because at first, even though those things happen, you still protect the world, but then you lie. And that one lie, it grows into folks' mind and begin to wonder what other things you lied about. Like, for example, did you really take down Brainiac? Are you and him working together on a bigger plan to come down the road? What about Doomsday? Is he really dead, or did you let him live and he's hiding somewhere out in the world right now? You see what we're saying? That one lie you told to the entire world about who you are, that lie grew. It made folks wonder what other things you are lying about. And that is a very huge statement to make. Now, the ending of the 3rd chapter is really more of Clark Kent fighting against Parasite. Now, the reason why he's fighting against Parasite, because apparently somebody on the security detail for the president felt like Clark could hurt the president. So they released Parasite as a way to fight against Clark. And honestly, the fight does not last that long. And the reason why, because Parasite realized that he is not able to get the same energy he used to get off Clark when Clark was Superman completely. And so the fight does get wrapped up very quickly. Now, the person who did release Parasite is going to be important at the end of the 4th chapter. But while you had Clark fighting against Parasite, well, we saw Diana break out every single person that was kidnapped by Argus. But then she begins to interview every single one of them. And the reason why? To prove that each and every single one of them is innocent. They had no idea that Clark was Superman. Well, some did, but not all of them. But at the same time, they weren't trying to overthrow the government. And that is a huge problem. You'll see why here in a moment. But you then have Steve Trevor tell Clark where to go to find his loved ones. And so he heads that way right now. But as the 3rd chapter closed, the last person to be interviewed is Lois Lane. And this is actually very huge, because she was the person who told the entire world that Clark Kent was Superman. But that is when we pick up with a new character known as Mr. Bend. Now, we are going to learn more about this character down the road. But when it comes to Mr. Bend, we do know that he does work for the president. We have no idea in what way. But when it comes to Mr. Bend, he is the same guy we saw earlier that was talking to Amanda Waller. Except this time, he's now watching Firestorm, another hero, where you have Firestorm trying to help a bunch of people who are trapped on a boat at the moment. And so you have Firestorm trying to use his powers to help those folks off the boat that are trapped in the middle of the ocean. Except when he does try, those people begin to turn into some kind of shadow creatures, and they try to attack him. And he's left to wonder what in the world is going on. Now, he is grabbed and taken hostage, but the question is though, by what? By who? Now, we saw these shadow creatures before over in Action Comics, where it came to Clark fighting against Wraith, a new character who was able to control those kind of creatures. And so now we're seeing them in this book as well. Either way, you have Firestorm get taken away, and now he's a hostage by these creatures. But getting back over to Diana, we do see her getting ready to interview Lois Lane. Now, this is very huge because the reason why you have Diana interviewing every single person right now who was kidnapped because they know Clark in some kind of way, she's trying to prove that they have no idea what's going on with Clark Kent's life, but they're not trying to overthrow the government. And so the last person is Lois Lane. And the reason why it's so huge because let's not forget, before we had the new 52, it was Clark and Lois Lane. But then DC said no more Clark and Lois Lane, let's try Clark and Diana. And that was literally most of the new 52. Now, with that being said, even when we had Clark and Diana, you have fans still hope that Lois and Clark would get together. And a lot of stories show that the two of them might have some kind of feelings for each other. And so this is Diana trying to help Lois, but at the same time try to see why did Lois did what she did, which was tell the entire world that Clark was Superman, but also trying to see if Lois might have feelings for Clark. Now, of course, you see that Lois says no to all three questions. Even with the lasso of truth, she still says no to all three questions, which also proves like her and Perry White and the others are all innocent. They're not trying to overthrow the government at all. But then we see Clark arrive. And when Clark arrives, he sees Diana there. And he's wondering why in the world is Diana here for? Because how in the world did she know where to go? Because this looks bad on Diana. It does seem like that maybe she did know the entire time where everybody was being taken to. And you have Diana say, no, that is not true. What happened was after Clark left, Steve Trevor called her up and told her where to go and what he wanted her to do. Because both Steve and Diana realized that when it comes to Clark, he would not be down with the idea of using the lasso of truth on his loved ones. And so when it came to Diana, she's all like, okay, Steve told me where they're being held at and also wants to prove that they are innocent. But the best way to do that is to use the lasso of truth. And so Diana did. Now you have Clark wonder, why in the world did you not tell me? And again, all because of the lasso of truth. Diana and Steve knew that Clark would not be down with the idea of using the lasso of truth. But either way, it still looks bad on Diana because kind of like, so technically and secretly, you were working with Steve Trevor right after I left. And you knew you could have stopped me and tried to talk to me and we could have worked something out. Either way, you have Clark just walk away and break out the rest of the people who also have been kidnapped by Argus. And this leads into Clark and Diana going to find the rest of the people who were taken away. But once they do that, well, they kind of find out that this is also a prison, because you also have some random bad guys being held here as well. And some random people, we have no idea who they are, also being held here as well. But every single person being held here and then put on stasis. Except right when you have Steel say that, we kind of find out the people who've been put in stasis are now being brought out of stasis. These different kind of bad guys. And then they're released to fight against Superman. And so it's up to Clark, Steel, and also Diana to fight against these people, but at the same time protect the other people who are not power beings, like Lana, Lois, Jimmy, Perry, and the list goes on. Now, after a few pages, you do have our heroes being able to handle those criminals, but right after that, it leads into a huge conversation between Clark, Lois, and Diana. When it comes to the conversation, it's really more of Clark saying that Diana and Lois both betrayed his trust. Now for Lois, we can kind of understand what he's saying there, because she did tell the entire world his secret, and she had no right to do that. But when it comes to Diana, well, she honestly did not do anything at all. I mean, yes, she did lie to him or did not tell him that, hey, Steve called me, I know where to go. But at the same time, she also used the lasso of truth. Now, real quick, Let me explain why Clark felt like the lasso of truth was a problem. Because even though you had everybody agree to use the lasso of truth to prove that they were innocent, at the same time, they had no choice. Yes, they agreed, but at the same time, what could they do? They can't say no, they can't say yes. They had to say yes, sorry, but they couldn't say no, because if they did, they'll be locked up again in this prison cell until Clark saves them. And so they had no choice but to say yes. And they did. And so that right there bothered Clark a lot. And so you had Clark say, I have to go somewhere else away from both you and Lois. Because right now, the two folks I believed in the most, I trusted the most, have betrayed my trust. And now I'm going somewhere else away from you guys. And he leaves just like that. But to wrap up today's video, we actually do pick up with Mr. Bend once again. Now, this is where he becomes very important for the storyline, because we come to find out Mr. Bend was the guy who was on the security detail for the president that had released Parasite. And because he did that without permission, he does get fired by the president. And so with him getting fired, you would think he'll be angry, but he's not. Matter of fact, he's very happy. But then we see him meet up with two other characters. One character does look like Vandal Savage, not confirmed, but the other character is Wraith, and we saw her over in Action Comics, the one where she basically attacked Metropolis, and she was the new mayor of Metropolis. But now we know that her and Mr. Bend and Vandal Savage are planning something big against Superman, and the question is, what? But this is So I want to continue our coverage over Superan Truth. When it came to Superan Truth, it was this era in DC Comics at the tail end of the New 52. See, the whole point of Superan Truth was that our big boy Blue was basically depowered because he had a new ability known as the solar flare. And with the solar flare, he was able to release a huge amount of energy. The problem is that usually after he does that, his cells will just recharge because he is a solar battery. Well, this time, or the last time he used a solar flare, his cells did not recharge. And so unfortunately, he's not our usual Superman. Now, on top of that, Lois Lane told the entire world that Superman is Clark Kent. And now the entire world is against him. Now, when it came to Superman in the New 52, he was in 4 separate titles: Superman, Action Comics, Batman and Superman, and Superman and Wonder Woman. But each book told their own story about the idea of Clark Kent being depowered, but also the entire world knowing that he is Superman. So for example, Superman, the main title, told the Truth storyline, or Before Truth. When it came to Action Comics, they told the Truth storyline. When it came to Superman and Wonder Woman, that storyline was Dark Truth. And this one right here, Batman and Superman, it says it is called the Hard Truth. Now, this is also very important when it comes to the whole New 52 timeline for Batman as well. And the reason why, because at this point in time, Bruce Wayne wasn't Batman. Matter of fact, thanks to Endgame, he forgot who he was and he was no longer Batman, and so you had Jim Gordon step in and become the new Batman and use an armor suit as a way to battle against the different bad guys in Gotham City. And so this is Clark finding out that his old friend Bruce is no longer Batman, but now somebody else has taken up the mantle. And that is very important for both characters' timeline. And matter of fact, when we dive into today's storyline, we do get a few pages to tell us that Superman is in Gotham City. Now, we have no idea why he's in Gotham City, but as the story goes on, we do learn why he was here. Now, with that being said, we do see him fighting against a set of guys who have very powerful weapons, but the question is, where did these weapons come from? And who are these guys? And matter of fact, as you have Superman try to fight against these guys, they don't tell us who they are. But I do want to use these early pages to show you that when it comes to Clark Kent, when I say he was depowered, I didn't mean completely. I really mean more of he's mostly depowered to the point where he still has his super strength, but not as strong as he usually is. He's still not as durable as he usually is, and he can no longer fly. And also he lost his heat vision. And so he still tries to be a hero, but he has to be more careful because now there is the chance he could die easily by these guys or any other enemies across DC Comics. Now, while you have our hero being able to take these guys down, well, that leads into the moment, and that is when we see Superman be confronted by Batman. Now, like I said earlier, this is not Bruce Wayne. This is Jim Gordon Batman. And so with them being the new Batman, Clark has no idea who this is. He had no idea that his friend Bruce has forgotten who he is, but on top of that, who took up the mantle after Bruce had, well, unfortunately stepped down. Now, you would think that when it comes to Superman, he should have the ability to look inside the armor suit to figure out who is the new Batman. But when it comes to Clark being depowered, he doesn't even have his X-ray vision, and that shows that what other powers he may have lost. And so when it comes to the two characters, it's really more Batman trying to arrest Superman. Now, at first, we're kind of left to wonder why in the world is Batman trying to arrest Superman? But when it comes to the other true storylines, they were all very similar. You always had somebody trying to arrest Superman. Metropolis PD tried. You also had different kind of government agencies, and here we are now. You have Batman, who definitely works alongside with Gotham PD trying to arrest Superman. Now, in the middle of their battle, you have Superman be confronted by Lex Luthor, and you have Lex say, if you want this guy to back off from you, just tell him that you're working with, well, me, Lex Luthor. And so we're left to wonder, what is Lex actually up to? And so then we jump into the next chapter to figure out how in the world did Superman end up in Gotham City. Now, with that being said, we pick up in Metropolis, where you have Superman fighting against more guys who have some very powerful weapons, but again, we have no idea where these weapons came from. Now, you have Clark Kent mention that with the idea of the entire world now knowing that he is Superman, well, you don't just have, different kind of government forces coming after him. You also have different bad guys also trying to come after him because now he's a depowered person. And you have some regular humans who always looked at Superman as an alien that should not be on Earth at all. And so when they got the word that he was depowered, they felt like this was the perfect time to go ahead and kill him off. The thing is, he's still a well-trained fighter. He still has some of his powers. And so he was able to take these guys down very easily. Not easily, but he still was able to win. Now, after he does win, he is confronted by a police officer that works for Metropolis PD. And when it comes to this officer, it really shows how the people of Metropolis truly has changed. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to these people, you have some who are really happy about the idea of Clark coming out and saying that he was Superman. But when it comes to people who already hated Clark because, well, he was an alien, once they found out that he was Clark Kent, it brought in more hate. Now, when it comes to this officer, he's right in the middle, where it's kind of like, yes, I do care for you. I still believe that you are a great person, but at the same time, get out of here because you're now a magnet for all the maniacs to come here to Metropolis to try to fight you. And innocent people are getting hurt. And he's right. But when it comes to Clark, he feels like all of this ideas of him being some kind of magnet must come from somebody else. And he already knows where it's coming from. Somebody who's trying to spread this idea that Clark should leave metropolis, and that would be Lex Luthor. Now, when it comes to Lex Luthor, this is where we figure out how in the world Clark ended up in Gotham City. But at first, when it comes to Lex, he cannot believe that Superman is Clark Kent, some farm boy. Because for many years, even in the New 52, you had Lex Luthor trying his best to figure out who is Superman? What is his secret identity? And matter of fact, when it comes to Lex Luthor, we're left to believe that he cannot believe that Clark Kent is Superman, that he believes that Clark Kent is just a separate person who is pretending and claiming that he is Superman, and the real Superman must be locked up somewhere against his will. And so it's Lex saying, I don't believe that you are Superman. But either way, I came here to tell you, or really I called you here because I want to tell you, I figure out where those weapons are coming from. They're coming from Gotham City, which explains why we saw in the first chapter Clark being in Gotham City. And so getting back into the present day, you have Clark and Batman fighting against one another. Now, luckily, you do have Lex Luthor step in. When he does, he says, listen, when it comes to Clark Kent, he's innocent, he's with me, but on top of that, he is also not guilty for any crimes that you believe that he had committed. Now, for Batman, he says, I cannot believe that for two reasons. The first is that because Clark just disappeared. While Lex and Batman were talking to one another, Clark just got out of there, just like that. But on top of that, when it comes to Batman, he believed that Clark had broke into the Wayne Court facility that he was just fighting at. Now, luckily for Clark, there were people there who witnessed the battle between Superman and those guys. And you have Lex question those guys where they say, no, he was innocent. He was trying to protect us. He did not break in at all. And so you have Batman say, fine, you know what? I have a third reason. Clark had disappeared. When he did, though, he took the evidence we need to figure out what in the world is going on here. And with Clark being in Gotham City, it makes sense to where he'll go next, which is the Batcave, to figure out what happened to Batman, because now there's a new guy running around saying that he's Batman, and Clark cannot believe that. And so when he does arrive at the Batcave, he cannot find Bruce at all. He has no idea what happened to Bruce, but he is confronted by Alfred. And when it comes to Alfred, he tells Clark, sorry man, listen, Bruce is gone. Not dead, but technically no longer being Batman. He's finally free. And for Alfred, it's the greatest thing in the world. He always wanted Bruce to leave the hero life behind. And now, when it comes to Bruce Wayne, he has. And Alfred is somewhat happy. But he does tell Clark, I understand you miss your best friend, but please, just please, do not let him come back in the shadows. Let him stay out of the shadows and be the man I want him to be. The man I believe he could be. And so it's Clark finding out that Bruce Wayne is no longer Batman. But the question is though, what happened to Batman to figure out why he's no longer the hero he used to be? And so then you have Clark call up Lois Lane. Now, let's not forget, Lois is the reason why the entire world knows that Clark Kent is Superman. And so when it comes to him calling up Lois, it's her wondering why in the world did this man call her up for? Because she has been trying to still help him, even though the entire world is against him. But he never did try to get her help or accept her help because he feels like he can no longer trust her at all. Even though she says, I'm still your friend. I'm still trying to help you. I still want to be there for you. And matter of fact, Clark does need her right now. He needs a friend. But the problem is though, he does not trust her at all. Even after a powerful speech where it's kind of like, we're both at fault for the actions we took earlier this year. But the thing is, Clark says, you know what? Never mind. Because it was still you who did the bigger thing that was actually wrong, which was telling the entire world my dark secret. And so you have Clark go back to the Batcave. And the reason why, because Alfred did tell Clark earlier that he may use the Batcave whenever. And so is one of those times where Clark needs to use the Batcave or the Bat computer to analyze the evidence that was found earlier to figure out where the powerful weapons are coming from. But on top of that, he needs a new ride. And so we do see him go over to Batman's old motorcycle, get a spray paint, and begin to change the colors on the motorcycle to fit his colors, and then go out into Gotham City. Because it's also Clark saying, if I can no longer work with Bruce Wayne or Lois Lane while being here in Gotham City, I need to work with someone else who could help me take these guys down who are somehow getting powerful weapons, which means that he has no choice. He has to work with the new Batman, Jim Gordon. And so when we jump into the third chapter, we pick up with Superman confronting Batman, Jim Gordon Batman. Now, the reason why you have Superman coming over to Jim Gordon is to ask for his help, to say, hey man, listen, we need to work together to figure out where in the world these powerful weapons are coming from. Now, when it comes to Batman, at first, he's not trying to listen at all. He's trying to arrest Superman because at least he now knows that he can arrest Clark only because Clark did steal evidence from a crime scene. And so it does lead into the two heroes fighting against each other. But it's still really more of Clark trying to say, we can fight, but at the end of the day, you're gonna have to work with me to figure out where this kind of weapon came from and who is trying to use these weapons to attack Gotham City. And so it does lead into the two heroes fighting against each other to the point where you have Clark show what the weapon can actually do that he stole from the crime scene. It does have the ability to absorb energy, like for example, energy from the flames. The flames just went away because Spear absorbed all of that energy. And so it's Clark saying, look, when it came to this weapon, I realized what it can do, but I realized I cannot figure out what could happen to Gotham City by myself. And so with that, I need your help. Now, when it comes to Jim Gordon, he does not want to work with Clark at all. But you have Clark say, you don't have a choice here, man. Because right now, if we don't work together, innocent people are going to die across the board. So whatever reasons you have to hate me, go ahead and take that up your butt and go ahead and sit down and work with me here. Because we got to figure out what in the world could be coming to Gotham and that could kill off innocent people left and right. And so you have Batman say, fine, I'll work with you then. Now, when it comes to our heroes, they do get inside Batman's helicopter, where he does have his own version of the Bat computer inside the helicopter. Now, while you have our two heroes in the helicopter, they begin to try to figure out where could the next attack be yet? And so they begin to trace the energy across Gotham City, and they realize that there's a huge amount of similar energy near a facility that belongs to Wayne Enterprises. Now, here's the thing. It does seem like the energy is coming from underground, which means that sooner or later, that facility building is going to be attacked. And so that leads to Batman and Superman going over there, where they do meet Lucius Fox. And they meet up with Lucius Fox. Now, when it comes to Lucius Fox, him and his people are trying to move this new project. And when it comes to this new project, it's a mini sun, which has the ability to power up the entire country for 100 of years. Now, here's the thing, because recently this building has been attacked by, well, a new group out there known as Savage Command. Now, this is our first time hearing that name, but in the other Truth books, we have saw Vandal Savage work alongside new characters for unknown reasons, which means that that group is called Savage or Dawn Command. And so with that being said, it does seem like they're trying to get their hands on this new sun. They're trying to move away from this facility. The problem is though, if anybody tries to play with this project, it could explode, killing off people in a 3 miles radius. And so they have to be very careful. Now, when it comes to Clark, he feels like the attack is coming very soon, because we have to remember earlier, him and Batman realized that something big is coming underground to attack this facility sooner or later. And so it's Clark saying, we have to get ready. That attack could come anytime now. Now that is when you have the actual facility get attacked by a guy known as Ukor, the Beast Lord of Subterranea. Now when it comes to Ukor, he does lead a race of people that live underneath the Earth's surface. Now with that being said, the reason why he's attacking this facility because he wants their mini sun. Now when it came to Ukor's people, they had their own version of a sun that gave solar energy. The problem is though, that sun is no longer around thanks to Clark Kent and Lois Lane in an earlier storyline that took place back in, I want to say, Grant Morrison's run on Action Comics. I could be wrong on that fact. Either way, because they lost their sun, they're coming here to this facility to get the mini sun as a way to have some kind of solar energy. Now, with that being said, as soon as he sees Superman, he's all like, ooh, you know what? This is great. I'm now able to get revenge against you, but at the same time, get my hands on that mini sun as well. Now, Clark tries to explain that if he does try to take that mini sun, it could lead to a huge problem, like it could explode and killing people in a 3-mile radius. Unfortunately though, when it comes to Ukor, he's not trying to listen. Now, Clark is able to kind of reason with him to calm him down, except you have Batman stab him right in the back. Now when it comes to Batman stabbing Ukor, it doesn't kill him, but it does upset him very much. Now Ukor came here alone and really only brought a few monsters, but because Batman had stabbed him, Ukor took that as a way to saying that the surface world had declared war against the subterranean people. And so you have Ukor leave to recover, but to also bring back an army to attack the surface world. Now Superman was very upset with Batman. And the reason why, because Clark was doing a great job calming down Ukor. Unfortunately, thanks to Batman, Ukor was angry once again and most likely has now just started a war. And so you have Superman follow Ukor back to the underground world to hopefully reason with him to calm him down to stop a war from actually happening. And so when we jump into the next chapter, we pick up with Superman going deeper into the underground world to hopefully find Utar to tell him, hey man, listen, let's not go to war. Now, unfortunately, the deeper he dives, he realized that at first he has to stay hidden and wait for the right time to confront Utar. Now, while you have Superman doing that, back on the surface world, you have Batman trying to help Lucius Fox move the sun somewhere else to a more secure facility, just in case it does get attacked once again, but on top of that, just in case it does explode, killing off innocent people in a 3-mile radius. Now, with all those things being said, you have Clark realize that he has to somehow fit in. He has to kind of go undercover. Now, luckily for him, he does find some armor that was just left out, and so he does fit in perfectly when it comes to the underground people. But the thing is, now he has to find Utar because he lost Utar while trying to find something to wear. And so that leads into Superman finding out that there are some regular people down here. And when I say that, I really mean people from the surface world. But the question is right now, how in the world did they get down here? Now, when he finds them, they're right now being chased down by some creatures of the underground world. Now, Superman is able to protect them, but the question is right now, how in the world did they get down here? Did Utar and his men grab them, brought them down here to be slaves? But you have the lady say no. Matter of fact, it's the complete opposite. See, she says that her and her husband and some other members of this group of humans from the surface world came from Arkham Asylum. But the thing is, around this point in time in Batman comics, something else had happened at Arkham Asylum, where a lot of prisoners were able to run free. But some of them came down here, and Utar was okay with them coming down here. He had accepted them. But they also said that they have a better chance to survive down here rather than up there on the surface world. And what she means by that is a small crime out there can get you thrown in jail for many years. But down here, you do a small crime, yeah, you gotta pay for it, but at least you're not gonna be locked up for 3 to 5 or possibly 10 years. And so she says, we have a better chance to survive. Now, she also mentioned that when it comes to the people down here, they needed that sun because right now they need some kind of source of energy. No matter what that energy is, they need some kind. Their main goal at first is to get the solar energy, but she heard that Clark Kent was able to stop them on the surface world. Now, she has no idea that Clark Kent is Superman, but at the same time, she has no idea that she is talking to either one. What she believes that it's some random soldier just making sure that she is okay and getting caught up on what's happening down here in the underground world. Now, while you have Batman waiting on Clark to give him an update on what's happening in the underground world, you have Batman go over to Metropolis. And the reason why, because he wants to learn more about Clark Kent, to figure out what kind of person Clark is. Now, the first person he sees is Perry White, and that is a huge problem. And the reason why, because when it comes to Perry White, he was very upset about the idea that Clark Kent was Superman. He truly felt like he was portrayed. Now, here is another thing though, because when it comes to Perry White, he hated the idea that Clark was hiding here at the Daily Planet as Superman, or Clark Kent, sorry, and basically put everybody in grave danger. Because if anybody had discovered earlier that Clark Kent was Superman, they could have came here and attacked this place, killing off a lot of innocent people. And so for Jim Gordon, when it comes to learning more about Clark Kent right now, what he's getting from Perry White is that Clark is not really a great person, that Clark is more of unreliable and always only thinking of himself. Now, the next person he does run into is, well, Lois Lane. And the reason why, because Lois Lane was following Jim Gordon around once she had heard that he was in Metropolis trying to gather information about Clark Kent, wanting to know more. Now, once he was able to figure out that he was being followed, he begins to question her, and she also questioned him. Now, when it comes to Lois Lane, she has no idea that Jim Gordon is Batman, but you do have Jim say that Clark came to me and asked for help. But unfortunately, I don't know if I can trust him or actually help him. Now, when it comes to Lois Lane, she does kind of paint this picture where Clark Kent is somebody you can trust, that Clark Kent is somebody you always want in your corner. But at the same time, when it comes to Clark, if you have any problems at all, he'll put your problems first before his. And that is a very important thing about Clark Kent. Now, when it comes to Lois Lane saying this, it's now Jim Gordon getting a completely different picture of Clark Kent, because earlier when it came to Perry White, he got a more darker picture, but now thanks to Lois, he's getting a lighter picture. But at the same time, this is a great moment for Lois Lane, and the reason why, because even though Clark does not trust her at all, because again, she told the entire world his secret, she's still trying the best to be a good friend for Clark, no matter what. Now, you have Clark call up Batman once again to warn him, hey, when it comes to Ucore, he does plan on attacking the surface world very soon. Are you guys ready? Now, when it comes to Batman, he is saying that, listen, I don't have any concerns at all. And the reason why, because him and Lucius Fox was able to move the actual mini-sun to a more secure facility. And that facility is out in the middle of the ocean. And so unless the underground people have a navy to use as a way to attack this facility, everything should be a-okay. Except that is the moment you have Clark say, actually, he does not need a navy at all, because apparently he had teamed up with Aquaman. Because when it came to the surface world denying the underground people the ability to have solar energy, it gave Aquaman more reasons to attack the surface world, because by this point in the New 52, Aquaman is really more of protecting Atlantis and kind of hating on the surface world. And so when he got word that, hey, Ucore, his folks are also having a hard time with the surface world, he agreed to help them to get the mini-sun. And so this could lead into many problems for Batman and Superman. And so when we jump into the final chapter of this storyline, we pick up with Superman trying to convince both Aquaman and also Ukor to not attack that facility so that Batman and Lucius have enough time to stabilize the sun, but to also just make sure it does not explode and kill off many people in a 3-mile radius. Now here comes the problem though, because when Aquaman sees where the sun is being held at, he realized that if that sun falls into the ocean, it could kill a lot of sea life. But on top of that, it could kill a lot of Atlanteans as well. Now, when it comes to Ukor, he also wants the sun for his underground people. And so you have two guys who are not trying to listen to Superman at all. Now, when it comes to Aquaman, even though you have Clark reveal that, hey, it's me, it's Superman, and I'm trying to calm you down before you make a huge mistake, Aquaman is not listening at all, because it's all about the idea that the oceans could be in danger because of this mini sun. And so now you have Superman fighting against Aquaman over this mini sun. Now this is where things get a tad bit more interesting, because we kind of find out that Lucius Fox realized that there is no way to actually stabilize the actual sun. And so the goal is to send the sun somewhere else, into space most likely, so that it won't be able to do harm to the Earth. Now here's the thing, because while you have Batman trying to get the sun ready for, well, launch, you have Superman fighting against Aquaman. Now you have Superman still trying his best to convince Aquaman to help out, but Aquaman is not listening. But while you have the two characters fighting against each other, well, Superman is able to get away from Aquaman and try to help Batman launch the rocket into, well, space. And so this is where things get a tad bit more interesting, because out of nowhere, you then have Dawn Command appear. Now, when it comes to Dawn Command, remember, we have no idea who these guys are, but apparently they have been trying to get their hands on this mini sun. And so once the sun was up in the sky, they were able to send a flying ship or a jet, whatever, to grab the container and then just disappear. We also kind of find out that they use Ukor as a way to get to this point, because they realize that sooner or later Lucius Fox is going to send this sun up into the sky to get away from hurting innocent people. And so they use Ukor and his people as a way to make Lucius Fox do that. And so Dawn Command finally got what they wanted, their mini sun. But to wrap up on today's video, we actually do pick up with Vandal Savage, where he does meet up with, well, Wraith. And remember, Wraith was the main bad guy in the Before Truth storyline when Superman came back to Metropolis. Now, with that being said, these two characters are planning something big to do against the entire world, or most likely just Superman. But the thing is, we still have no idea what that plan actually is. Either way, they do seem like they're very happy about the idea they now have their mini sun. And so this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.